You've heard this before, maybe even lived it yourself. A person buys stock, the stock soars. He buys many more shares and he becomes a multimillionaire. And when he looks in the mirror, what does he see? A genius, of course. But a year later, he's wiped out, grappling with debt and depression, and every time he looks in the mirror, he sees a failure. It's a tale often told after devastating stock market corrections, but not often told about rabbis. Years ago, my Orthodox colleague, Rabbi Benjamin Beth, within a year, turned his savings of $50,000 into $7 million. He was setting up trusts at Yeshiva University and for his 4 children and 9 grandchildren. He was living nicer than he ever had before. Despite a long and successful career, he said he never felt better, never felt more intelligent. He was on top of the world. Then, of course, as quickly as he made it, the market crashed. All those millions in gains, the trusts he was setting up, all wiped out, completely gone. Now, in the ladder of importance, rabbis, by definition, are supposed to put material losses far below spiritual gains. Yet for this rabbi, Rabbi Beth, his ego was shattered. He was even embarrassed to look his wife in the eyes. Every time he looked in the mirror, he saw a failure. The rabbi is not alone. One of the most powerful examples I know was a gentleman named Adolf Markel. In 2007, he was the richest man in Germany with a net worth of $12 billion. But a year later, almost overnight, he lost $3 billion on one stock market move. So what did Merkel do? When he realized he was no longer the richest man in his country of Germany, he wrote a suicide note and he walked in front of a speeding train. Did Adolf Merkel die because he lost money? Or did he die because of what money meant to him? For Merkel, money was an identity. It was his source of significance. The loss of his status as the richest man in his country was too much to bear. He felt like a failure, even though there was still $9 billion left in his pockets. I wouldn't mind feeling that way. Now, you might be thinking, what a waste. But it may be a little too easy for us to judge this man. How often have we attached our identity at some level to money? Rabbi Beth now admits that his wife would ask him, why was he calling his stockbroker 20 times a day? He responded, I needed to know what I'm worth. Even a rabbi can base his self-worth on his net worth. There are times I also do it. Despite our great blessings, and we have many, it's still not always easy. No matter how hard Lisa and I work, there are always more expenses. Insurance premiums, tuition bills, and of course, those never, ever, ever ending Amazon charges. Not to mention, there are things we want to do. Take vacations, buy nice clothes. It seems more challenging than ever before. It also doesn't help that there are always others who seem to have more. Those neighbors who constantly seem to be buying nicer things or going on more exotic trips. Neighbors who seem to be able to do it all. And when Lisa and I cannot do it, sometimes it's easy to get down. Feel like something isn't right. And when I do, when I lose focus, when I start to base my self-worth on my net worth, I turn to my faith, the wisdom and values of our tradition. I often turn to Viktor Frankl and his masterpiece, Man's Search for Meaning. As I said before, I believe it's one of the most important Jewish books ever written. Viktor Frankl was a well-respected Austrian psychiatrist who survived 4 concentration camps. He did so by recognizing in the camps he could not change his physical circumstances. Rather, in the darkest and cruelest of all places, he could still use his God-given abilities to help others. Even in the midst of hell, he could dedicate himself to counseling. And his counseling often worked by not only giving himself, but also hundreds of others the will to survive. He gave countless Jews a reason to survive until the war was over. The Nazis showed Viktor Frankl that one's possessions could be lost at any given moment. Yet way beyond material possessions, Frankl had found a much deeper meaning. After the war, Frankl used what he had learned to develop logotherapy. It's a life-saving therapy still used across the world. And logotherapy is based on the premise our main motivation for living is our will to find everlasting significance. The sages of our tradition reminded us centuries ago, within each individual, within each of us, every single one of us, is a need for genuine purpose, for something or someone to live for that is truly everlasting. They taught that God put us all here for a reason. As the rabbis of the Mishnah teach, there is no one who doesn't have his hour and no one who doesn't have their rightful place. Our life's journey is working and working to discover what that reason is. Yet think about the state of our society today. We have a higher standard of living, more opportunities than any generation ever before. But more than ever, too many are lost, young and old, unsure what their purpose is in life. How could that be? And why is that the case? Frankl passed away in 1997 at the age of 92, but in so many ways he was a prophet. Frankl warned us that in our era of plenty, when so much is available, we could get in trouble if we base our reason for living, our significance, on how much money we have. Yet Frankl could never have envisioned just how bad it could get. He could never have imagined Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, a day and age where it seems we share everything. Everyone sees what we have. And now, we also see others who have more, constantly. And no matter how much we may possess, nothing may ever seem enough. So even more so today, we may believe that we can only seem significant to others, we're only worthy by the size of our homes and the sticker price of our cars. It's no surprise that we're led to believe that on every nice vacation we go on, we have to post about it 3 times a day. Or every nice new car we buy, we may be tempted, instead of parking it safely in our garage, we have to leave it out in our driveway for everyone to see. It's okay if you've done such a thing. I've done it too. It's human nature, especially today. As numerous studies have pointed out, many of us have that impulse to keep up with our neighbors because we think by doing so, we'll seem more worthy. In one study of major lottery winners, researchers actually found that not only did the winners of the lottery increase their spending, so did their next-door neighbors. Because if your neighbor wins a nice chunk of money, what are you going to do? You too, just to keep up, are more likely to get yourself a new car and park it in your driveway. Do some exterior home renovations. Buy other nice things you don't even need. Even though in another study, psychologists gave participants a series of questionnaires to discover the reasons, the genuine reasons behind their large purchases. They discovered the more a purchase was motivated by an effort to impress others, in the end, the less meaningful the purchase became. By now, we should know that. Remember during the pandemic? How many of us said that we finally realized that it wasn't about how much money we had? For the first time in our lives, we were forced to stay inside, and we soon realized it was just about our loved ones, close friends. We said we finally understood that it really was our relationships that gave us the meaning and significance we all need. We professed that was going to be the new norm. Did we keep that promise? In our search for meaning, have we resorted back to the way things were? Trying to impress others with more exotic vacations, nicer jewelry, larger B'nai Mitzvah parties. Now we know there is more to life, but do we keep doing it? To make an impression, still, some buy a lot more than they should, but they don't find meaning. Instead, when we buy more than we should, what do we find? We find stress, depression. We find debt. I know of too many families in our community who are only out of money because they want others to think they have all the funds in the world. They're making $47,000 a month. They're in the 1%, but they spend $50,000 a month. They're thousands and thousands of dollars in debt. I say this especially to our younger families. Don't put yourself into debt. You'll jeopardize your marriage, and you'll risk the future of your own children. I've seen it too many times. Trying to find meaning by working to impress others, it never, ever works. Perhaps the litmus test for all of us would be, would we still engage in experience or buy a particular item if no one outside our families could see it and we could tell no one about it? My friends, I'm not saying earning a living isn't important. Of course, we should all do what we can to provide for others and ourselves, our loved ones. And making a lot of money, it can be a blessing. The Bible even teaches that Abraham was blessed by riches. In fact, as long as one is working in an honest and ethical way to make a living, the rabbis teach us one is permitted to pray for wealth. But our tradition is also clear. As my colleague, Rabbi David Wolpe, teaches, the sages of our tradition never thought that being rich is being worthy, or that being poor was being worthless. So my friends, on this Yom Kippur, on this holy day, don't be led astray. Don't be deceived. Being worth less is not being worthless. Know that if tomorrow you had nothing, you would be no less precious in God's eyes. And you should be no less precious in your own. If you don't have beautiful clothes, or a big house, or a fancy car, you're not worth anything less of a soul as a spark of God. And deep down, I believe we all know this. But in our day and age, in this era of plenty, it's hard to hold on to sometimes. But know this, remember this. I ask you on this day to internalize this as we begin a new year in our Jewish tradition. It's not having money that gives you status, now or forever. Our lives are judged by so much more, by our loved ones and by God, especially on this Day of Atonement. If you truly know your self-worth, you know it's not measured in dollars. And that leads me to my final story. Let me tell you about another rabbi who did not lose millions in the market. His name is Rabbi Meyer Kripke, and his wife Dorothy led the conservative congregation in Omaha, Nebraska for over 3 decades. He passed away a few years ago at the age of 100. When he first came to Omaha in 1946, he belonged to the same Rotary Club as a young money manager who was building a solid local reputation. Eventually, they became close friends. And after the rabbi's parents passed away, he inherited $67,000. After years of coaxing by his wife, the young rabbi finally decided to invest with that young money manager. That young money manager turned out to be Warren Buffett. And that original investment of $67,000, it grew to over $25 million. You would think that Rabbi Krepke's life would have dramatically changed. But amazingly, no one except the Buffetts and the rabbi's family ever knew how much money the rabbi actually had. Instead, he and his wife remained in Omaha until they passed away, living in the same 3-bedroom home. It clearly was not money that brought the rabbi and his family happiness. In fact, he gave away a lot of his money to tzedakah. Money had not changed the fact that his great loves of life remained family and the Jewish people. And what brought him true meaning was his ability to help his loved ones and to help others in need, making a difference in his community and having strong relationships with his wife and his children. As we now prepare for Yizkor, I think about the many funerals I'm honored to conduct every year. As I gather with families to prepare a eulogy, the theme is constant. The worth of a loved one is never about how much money someone had. Never. And if the money they made is all the family talks about, then something went wrong, terribly wrong. The love, admiration, and respect family members demonstrate for their loved one is about so much more. So when there are things Lisa and I just cannot afford to do, I try to reflect on what it is ultimately all about. When I look in the mirror, especially today, I try to remember what I should always see. When you look in the mirror, can you look at someone not basing their self-worth on their net worth? No matter how much money you have, can you see a success? What a better year it would be for us all. Gamar Hatima Tova. May we all be sealed for a good new year.